One Fivers podcast brought to you by the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network, 95.7 The Game. I'm Evan Giddings. That is Marc Grandi. Please download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. 5 stars are, as always, much appreciated. Well, let's talk about the quarterback, Marc. QB1, as of now, according to John Lynch at least, when he's ready and healthy, and that's Brock Purdy, because we talked about him in the last episode. First time we heard from him officially since his surgery. Said everything is going, quote, according to plan, and he did this interview with his local Fox Sport affiliate in Phoenix, 910, and he also discussed some areas of improvement that he would like to make. And so I'll just read them off, and then we can dive into it. But he addressed, quote unquote, the cons of last season, which revolved around his footwork and his timing. Those are the areas that once Brock Purdy, after the 3-month mark of his surgery, is able to get going, able to figure out where his arm is at, those are the areas he wants to improve in. Do you agree that he needs to, Marc?
I mean, I suppose that you could always get better at footwork. I thought, in terms of footwork, if there was an area where I thought he could improve, and I guess this is kind of only, it's not directly related to footwork, but it's overusing his feet sometimes. And I think it's trusting his offensive line and hanging on in the pocket for a little bit longer. I don't know how you feel about this, Evan. My relatively untrained quarterback footwork eye didn't really tell me that he has bad footwork. Like he seems to, consistently, go through his 5-step drop, 3-step drop, whatever it is, and he loads his weight well, and he has good balance in the pocket. But the one thing that stands out to me, Evan, is he's a little jumpy and eager in the pocket and is ready to use his feet and leave the pocket and evade and try to make plays, which is all good and all. But the Niners offense is designed for a pocket passer, and generally you'll have more success when you're in the pocket. So I think that's one thing that stood out to me. I didn't quite see what Brock Purdy is talking about. I'm not saying he's wrong and I'm right, because he clearly knows a lot more about it than I do, of course. But I thought his footwork is fine, especially for a 7th-round rookie quarterback. Again, you can always get better, but that didn't stand out to me as something that is, I don't know, the first page, like, must improve for Brock Purdy this offseason.
Yeah, I think there was a lot of coach speak in there, and I think that was who Brock Purdy is, number one. I also think, number two, look, what are the most important things to Kyle Shanahan from a quarterback perspective?
Timing,
the play calling, the play sheet, and footwork. Like, those are, like, you have to do all three of those things to get on the field. Like in basketball, you got to be able to make a free throw, you got to be able to play some defense, and you got to be able to make a layup. In baseball, you got to be able to lay a bunt down. You got to know how to run the bases. You got to know how to make a catch with two hands. Like, these are all fundamental things that you have to get on the field. And I think a big reason why, number one, he wowed the 49ers last year, because they sensed, I guess, all of those things being ahead of the curve for a 7th-round pick. And I also think that's where I saw him be the most impressive. Like, the one thing that is the most, I would say, questionable about Brock Purdy is the thing that he unfortunately injured, and that's his arm and his arm strength. I think that timing-wise, he was pretty damn good in his rookie season. Like you mentioned, you can always get better, but from weeks 13 through 18, so when he took over to the end of the regular season, he was 4th in expected points added, behind Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts, and I'll let you guess the third one. I thought it was actually pretty interesting.
Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts. This is expected points added?
Yes.
During the final 6 weeks of the regular season? Okay. Is it
he's
not
in the
Josh
NFC.
Allen?
He's
Josh
in the Allen.
Is it Kirk Cousins?
It's not Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
He has not been linked to the 49ers. So he does play in his division.
He plays in Kirk Cousins' division. Jared Goff.
Yes, sir. It was Jared Goff. But that's the kind of company
that, right there.
Shout out the Bears. New head coach of basketball, by the way. We could talk about that later. But But Brock Purdy was in that elite group, right? He was with the Mahomes and the Hurtses and I guess the Goffs. But like, I didn't think there was much of an issue with those things that he talked about working on. And actually, I kind of looked at a couple of numbers. Like if you look at some advanced metrics, like Brock Purdy had a 67% completion rating. That's pretty good. But according to Next Gen Stats, he had a 69% expected completion percentage. So he actually was supposed to have been, based on his throws and the windows that he threw into and the receivers he's thrown to, been better. Like, I thought timing and footwork were the least of his concerns, and yet those are the things that he's talking about improving. So I don't know what you want to take away from it, but to me, he's trying to come out and say, hey, Kyle, look, I'm focused on what you want me to focus on, and that's why I'm going to be your guy when I'm back and ready.
It also does kind of sound like, I think you're onto something. Maybe it's what you're saying. Brock Purdy is trying to prove to Kyle Shanahan, like, hey, I know what makes this offense go, and I'm going to get better at it. I think it's also maybe Brock Purdy just regurgitating everything that Kyle Shanahan has told him. And it's just kind of muscle memory now. Someone asks him, say, what do you got to do better? And he just suddenly spits out whatever Kyle Shanahan just yelled at him about, like most recently, which is, you see that step with your left foot there on this drop on the 3rd and 7 play. It's got to be 5 inches more to the right, and then you're golden. Like, I can just imagine all the film sessions that these guys have gone through, even during the off season, and as they're checking in with his elbow and all of that, they have these kinds of conversations. So maybe part of it is Brock Purdy trying to show to Kyle, hey, like, I'm paying attention. I know what you need out of your quarterback, and I'm going to do that. But it also might just be, this is what Kyle has told me, and I trust Kyle, and I'm just gonna tell you what he's been telling me.
Well, this is where I will give Shanahan credit. It does appear that every quarterback that has worked with him all say the right things. Like, they all are great public speakers when it comes to saying nothing
Yep.
without, like, or while saying, I guess, technically everything under the sun. Like, Brock Purdy is, by all accounts, well spoken. He comes from the Trey Lance School of Communication, and Trey Lance comes from the Jimmy Garoppolo School of Communication, and that comes from the Kyle Shanahan School of Communication with the media. And I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny. It was an added part of the interview that he had, and I mean, don't get me wrong. I don't mean to make fun of the guy, but it's not as comical as, say, Aaron Rodgers going to the 49ers or Mac Jones being traded for Trey Lance. But I thought it gave me a chortle.
Yeah.
How about that?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not surprised that Brock Purdy is at that level already, because he played 4 years at Iowa State. He was a multi-year starter. He's been in front of media scrums for years now. Again, Iowa State media scrum, I'm not comparing that to an NFL team, of course, but I mean, that's a Power 5 school. They had pretty good success while he was there. They went to some bowl games. They went to and won a Fiesta Bowl. It was against my Oregon Ducks, unfortunately. But I mean, he's he's played in some big games. He knows what it's like to have a microphone and cameras in front of him, so he's probably learned some lessons there. What does shock me, and we learned this right when Trey Lance was drafted. What surprises me is how Trey Lance handles media, and he handles it like he's a vet. But he went to North Dakota State, and obviously he won, an FCS championship there, and it's obviously a very big program. And up in the North Dakota and South Dakota area, in the north part of our country, they're one of the big football stories, at least collegiately, and they get some coverage. Of course, you know that. I know you spent time in Fargo. But it surprised me that Trey Lance is as media savvy, it seems, as he was when he got drafted into the 49ers. Brock Purdy does not surprise me as much, but Trey Lance does.
Yeah, I mean, maybe just because I had a chance to interview Trey when he was a true freshman and like no one knew who he was.
Yeah.
I'm not super surprised. I mean, he was he is the son of a former athlete. I know his dad didn't play
Yeah.
in the NFL, but he kind of gets it from his pops or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can definitely see that. Like, the Big 12 is certainly going to get more scrutiny and more coverage and more media members than the FCS. Trey Lance was the orchestrator of one national championship, was a part of two. Do have to correct you there. But like,
I meant as the starting quarterback. Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, he's played like, unfortunately, 14 games in the last 4 years. But no, his podium game is elite. And so far, Brock Purdy's podium game appears to be equal, if not maybe just a little bit less or so, because I think he has to deal with less difficult questions. Like, and actually, this is something where I think we should keep an eye on. Brock Purdy hasn't faced any adversity yet in his career, and he hasn't had any expectations so far. So he's able to answer all these questions like maybe Kyle would ask of him, because he's got all the answers. Like, he's walking into a test he knows the answer to when he has to do a media appearance. Meanwhile, Trey Lance is being asked all these difficult questions about his relationship with Kyle, his standing in the organization, his relationship with his teammates, his injuries, how he's been working through them, having to be drafted with expectations of holding a franchise on your shoulders. Meanwhile, Brock Purdy just like, yeah, man. I mean, I was picked last, and I balled out, and I got hurt, but I'm coming back, and I'll be back, and I just want to work on this, kind of tinker with that, and I'm just gonna be fine. And the 49ers and me, we're gonna go out and win some games next year. It's gonna be all good. But if he comes back and they lose their first two, not saying they will, nor do I think they will, but then we're going to see, I think, a different side potentially of Brock Purdy, and we'll really see what his podium game's all about.
You're right. I hadn't thought about that. I think maybe we've briefly touched on this a little bit, but not directly this angle. I mean, all of Brock Purdy's post game pressers and even like midweek pressers this most recent season, since he got the starting job after Jimmy Garoppolo's injury, he's basically like walked into a standing ovation almost. Like, because like, oh my God, this is a seventh-round rookie quarterback. You're the guy that's making all of our jobs in the media so easy. This is the biggest story in the NFL. We love you so much, Brock. And this isn't, obviously that's not what, the professional media members that cover the 49ers say, of course, but it has that feel of a, like, oh my God, this is the guy that is leading the 49ers to this great win streak, and he came out of nowhere, and it's such an incredible story, and there's nothing that Brock Purdy can really do or say that off the field, at least, that changes that. So you're right. There's no pressure in those press conferences. But when you're Trey Lance and you struggle after week one, and you weren't the starter the previous year after being the third round pick, you do tend to have a little more awkward environments at your press conferences. And that will probably continue this summer when the team gets together for OTAs and we talk to Trey Lance, because he'll likely be taking some first team reps. Though it'll be kind of a tense environment, would be my guess. I'm not saying Trey Lance is going to answer questions in any poor way. As you said, he's very polished in being respectful and kind and really not saying much while still saying a lot of words, but not really anything meaningful comes out. It'll be interesting to see how that tone does change here this offseason.
Are you familiar with the 2000 film Gladiator, Marc?
Of course. Russell Crowe's finest.
One of, I would argue. Shout out Beautiful Mind. However, I do think that Brock Purdy right now is Maximus Decimus Meridius. Like, he's the guy that everyone is rooting for when he steps into the gladiator ring. He can do no wrong because he has never failed. And yet, even though there might be some people, Commodus in this situation, that might be rooting against him, he has not. And so if you are Brock Purdy and you're stepping into the gladiator ring of modern day over Levi's Stadium and you got thousands of people cheering you on, then yeah, it's a little bit easier to be likable. It's a little bit easier to say the right things. Meanwhile, Trey Lance is in a situation where I don't want to say people are rooting against him, but people are not nearly as much in his corner, nor I think have they ever been, because of the kind of speculation surrounding even his original draft status as now Brock Purdy, who wasn't expected to do anything. So, look, I think that Brock Purdy is, the fact that he wants to work on his footwork and his timing, and he wants to show Kyle that once he gets back from his injury that he's going to be locked in and all ready to go. I think that's great. But I also do want to see what Brock Purdy says and how he reacts the moment he faces his first situation in which there's adversity in the NFL, because to his credit, there has been none.
Yeah, you're right. It's the power of expectations. And for Purdy, there were no expectations last year, just like Maximus as he begins his, fight up through the gladiator ranks. But once you get on that big stage and there are expectations, you're a household name now. You've done it in the past. Can you keep it up? That's when these things change. And that's what this next season signals and means for Brock Purdy.
Well, our next episode is going to be coming on Tuesday, but please follow us on social media at 415ers, Twitter, Instagram. We'll be posting some clips. Check us out on YouTube. Of course, please download, rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. As that is Marc Grandi. My name is Evan Giddings. We're coming at you twice a week here in the off season on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network. Look out for our next episode. We'll talk to you next time.